Hello everybody and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about reciprocals and the distributive property in the context of solving equations. So your goal after watching this video should be able to solve two variable equations and one variable equations using the reciprocal and the distributive property. So taking a look here, we're going to start off like we always do, grounding this in reality. So we have our balance, and again that's how we visually represent equals in the equal sign. So if we have equal weight on both sides, that's how we know that we have balance and that we have a balanced equation. Starting off here, we're looking at on the left side, let's say somebody got a little bit hungry and they ate half of a cookie, and it turns out that half of a cookie and one whole brownie piece balance out. So if our goal in this question is to see for one whole cookie, how much should we see on the right side? So visually we might be able to see what the answer is in our head right now, just kind of intuitively looking at this, but our goal after this lesson is to be able to come back to this question and use the algebra steps today to be able to go through and solve and to show our work algebraically to balance an equation like this. And while we can maybe easily see it if it's half of a cookie, it might get a little bit more challenging if it was 2/5 of a cookie, for example. So what we're learning today is a skill that can generalize to any sort of fraction and balance on the other side. So our first definition for today is reciprocal. We might have seen this in a few different math contexts, but the idea is that when we multiply by this, we get 1. So no matter what term it is, if we multiply by the reciprocal, we get 1. So for example, like I was saying, 2/5. The reciprocal of 2/5, we flip it, it's actually 5/2. If we multiply 2/5 by 5/2, we'll get 10/10, which is just 1. So no matter what fraction you have, if you multiply it by its reciprocal, or basically the flipped version of itself, it doesn't matter what it is, you'll end up with an answer of 1. And that's going to help us today when we're solving equations. So our first step, eliminate any constants that are there, and then our next step is multiply by the reciprocal to solve when we see fractions. So very similar steps. The only difference is that last step to get the variable alone, we are multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's take a look here. On the first one, so we're going to add 6 to both sides. Again, step number 1 said to eliminate the constants, and we eliminated it on the left side, and on the right side we're left with 11. Again, now we have our fraction here, so time to take our reciprocal, and a reminder that reciprocal is again just that same fraction but flipped. So we're going to be multiplying both sides by 3/1. So here on the left we'll get 3/3 x, and then on the right we'll get 33/1. And then if we move this to the side and simplify it, that 3/3 is 1x, and then 33 divided by 1 is 33. So we'll see that as our full answer there on the left side, and that's a reciprocal type question. See if we can use the same kind of idea to work through. As a second note here, if you have b squared, the way that we're going to get that to just b is to take the square root of both sides. So just know that to get from b squared to b, we're going to take the square root. So that's a hint for number 2. All right, our next vocab term is the distributive property. And this is just a property that says when we are multiplying a group, we'll get the same answer as multiplying the parts and then adding them. So for example, if we had 2 times 3 plus 1, we have 2 different ways that we can go through and solve this. So first we could do 2 times 4 to get us 8. So we're taking the insides and adding them. The second way is that we can distribute the 2 in to the individual parts and get 6 plus 2. But either way, that's going to equal 8 for us. So that's an example of the 2 ways that we can treat the distributive property. When we see this with variables, though, we first want to distribute to eliminate any parentheses and then solve using any method of our choice after. So parentheses do pose a challenge when we have variables, so our job here, our goal is to be able to go through to eliminate those parentheses and then to solve. So step number 1 here, like we had 2 options above in the example, we're going to have 2 options for solving. So I'm going to show each option on the side. So 3x plus 5 equals 27. Option number 1 is to distribute in, and I'm going to show clearly with those arrows that that is what I am multiplying by. A common mistake is to just multiply the first term and forget to do 3 times 5 is 15. So don't forget to also multiply that second term there. And then next we're just going to go through and solve like we normally would for an equation. So 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by 3x equals 4. So that's one option for solving. The second option for solving is for this exact same question. We have 3 times in parentheses x plus 5. So the inverse of 3 times, we can also divide here. And we'll be left with x plus 5 equals 9. Subtract 5 on both sides. I don't know why I just wrote 4, sorry about that. Subtract 5 on both sides, and we'll get x equals 4. So it does not matter how we do it. You can divide or you can distribute. You'll get the same answer there. So let's bring it back to number 1. We have a goal of getting to 1 whole cookie, and we have 1/2 of a cookie on the left side, and then we just have 1 brownie on the right side. So what do we do here? We take our reciprocal and we can multiply that one in. So here we go. Let's see if this works. So 2 divided by 2, we have 1 cookie on the left, and then 2 over 1 is just 2 brownies on the right. So we did successfully solve for this. You might have been able to see if you have 2 halves, it equals the whole. So we double the weight on the left, we double the weight on the right. And that is basically how this one will work out for us. So an example of anytime you see fractions, use that reciprocal, have some confidence in solving, and as long as it's the only thing on that side of the equation, the reciprocal will work perfectly for you. Awesome. So don't forget to complete those questions, the 2 leftover ones that we didn't do in the video here, and I will see you in class very soon. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.